Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the Turbo Corolla. Now 2 months ago I installed the TurboKits.com Turbo Kit, and in their instructions I was told to drive the car for 500 miles for a little break-in period, and well, here we are 2 months later, and only now has this car been driven 500 miles. Well, it's not exactly true. I've only driven it 400 something miles, but it's close enough to the 500 mile mark where I'm basically saying it's broken in. And I mean, considering it's a turbo kit and turbos, from the general consensus I've gathered online, don't really seem to need a break-in period, I think I'm fine. So today is going to be the first oil change, the first 500 mile oil change. We're going to get rid of the half synthetic oil and we're going to replace it with full synthetic. It's going to be nice. We'll check the condition of the oil, make sure that my engine is not falling apart, and we'll also check out the oil pan to see if it's leaking, because when I installed everything I did gasket the oil pan the wrong way. I put RTV on the outside of the bolt holes instead of the inside, which, silly little mistake. We'll see if it's leaking or not. So here we go, let's get the car up on jack stands and let's take a look underneath. Alright, for extra safety I'll leave the jack right there, and let's go underneath and take a look. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to check is if the oil pan is leaking or not, and we'll go from there. Let's see, up at the front, looks pretty good. Oh, there's something at the back. Is that oil? Oh, it is leaking from somewhere. Where's it leaking from? Coming from above the oil pan. Well, the good news is that the RTV around my oil pan is not leaking, so everybody who told me that it was gonna leak because I gasketed it the wrong way, how do you feel now? And I'll show you guys what I'm looking at here in a second. Well, the oil pan is not leaking. I was planning to drop the oil pan and re-gasket it, but if it's not broken, then I'll just leave it. Before I show you guys what I'm looking at on the bottom, I'm gonna real quick take a look up top and see if there's any oil leaking from the top. Ooh, that's probably my spot then. Valve cover gasket, it looks like. It's leaking from a little corner there. I mean, that seems a bit wet. So that's what I'm looking at. Way in there, there's a bit of a wet spot, and it looks like it's coming from this corner of the valve cover and dripping all the way down. Best angle I can probably show you this is probably around here. So as you can see, oil pan and oil pan RTV pretty dry. Any oil that's leaking is all from the top, which is good, even though I may have gasketed it incorrectly. So far, the RTV has held up. So it looks like I need a new valve cover gasket, which is annoying because I just did it a couple of years ago. I don't think it's an issue around the timing chain cover gasket. I think all of that oil is coming from up top by the valve cover. So it's not like my XRS where the timing chain cover gasket is leaking. It looks like it's just coming from up top. Well, that turned out better than I thought. I was pretty confident that I would need to pull the oil pan off and re-gasket it. Turns out I don't have to. Now in the future it might leak, so it's something I'm still going to keep an eye on, but for now, it doesn't look like it's broken, so I don't see a reason to fix it at the minute. So let's go ahead, get the drain pan under there, drain out the old oil, and while the old oil is draining out, I'm going to double check some of the bolts around the turbo. Pretty much any bolt that I touched during the turbo install, I'm going to double check and make sure that they're still tight. But first, let's drain the oil. So the intercooler piping is kinda in the way of the drain plug. I say kind of because I can still reach it, but it might be kind of a pain to remove. Oh, drain plug was tighter on there than I was expecting. Should probably put a glove on so I don't get oil all over my hands, but I kinda don't care. Used motor oil is all over my hand. I couldn't get it out of the way in time. I see a bit of a design flaw. There is lots of oil going around my intercooler piping here. Yeah, that's the main issue with this. Yeah, my intercooler pipe is getting covered in oil, and it looks like this is gonna happen every time I drain this. So, lovely. When I put the drain plug back in, I can just wipe off all that extra oil there. That's fine. Well, while that's draining, I'll check all the bolts and nuts and clamps and just make sure that they're all okay. Yeah, so it looks like these clamps loosened up a little bit. Nothing too bad though. Don't think they loosened enough to cause any vacuum leaks. Oh, that's very tight. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. And that one's good. Okay. All 5 on the manifold are good. The downpipe bolts are kind of way back there. Even though I should check them now, I am going to just leave those alone. And that's because, spoilers, yeah, we're getting a new exhaust for this car. Not a new downpipe, but I'll check the downpipe bolts when it's time to put the new exhaust on. Very excited to show you it. It'll be interesting because it's actually an exhaust that's not for this car, but I think it'll still fit. And you'll see what I mean when I post a video putting the exhaust on this car. Right, little mini check of everything over. It all looks pretty good, it all looks pretty sound. The main thing I was worried about was the bolts on the manifold and the bolts that hold the turbo to the manifold, because that's the part that gets the most shaking and stuff. I mean, it's right on the engine, but they look good. And that was also another thing I wanted to mention. Yes, people pointed out to me when I installed all this stuff that I didn't use Loctite. And I probably should have. I bought Loctite and I kind of just didn't use it. The reason I didn't use it was because all the nuts were slightly squeezed a little bit. So you can't turn them in by hand. You have to use a wrench or a socket and ratchet to drive them in. They don't go in on their own. So I was pretty confident that because of that, they wouldn't come out on their own either. But to be fair, I should have used Loctite. I had it, and it would be a nice little preventative measure. So should have used it, didn't use it, and it hasn't caused any problems. So not a big deal. Should probably check coolant as well. This car hasn't had any overheating problems, but just to make sure the coolant level is where it should be. First of all, let's check reservoir tank. It's empty. Ooh. Inside the radiator looks fine, but the reservoir tank is empty, so I need to put... And my camera stopped recording. And so I've checked all the fluids, they're all good, all the bolts are checked. That's pretty much everything that needs to be checked. All I need to do is just wait for the rest of the oil to come out and then refill it, and then we're done. That's it. Before we refill the oil, I don't know, maybe check the horn. Well, horn's working. Now we can put the drain plug back and get the car back on the ground, fill it up with oil, and we're done. That's it. That's all she needs. Way easier than I thought it was gonna be. This is pretty much just a routine oil change. It's always nice when this stuff goes well. And there it is. Another tub of oil that I'm gonna have to throw away. I have too many of these. I just did an oil change on the Camry. Now I'm doing an oil change on this car. I've got to change the oil on the Highlander soon. Then I've got to change the oil on the Sienna. 4 tubs of oil that I'm gonna have to throw away. Oh well, I'll just wait until I'm done changing the oil on all of them, and then I'll just throw it over to the recycling center and have them take care of it. Oh, I almost forgot. Once I start driving the Subi again after I fix that, I've got to change the oil on that car. That's 5 cars. Someone please help me. Doesn't that just look delicious? Real quick, what I want to do is just kind of dip my fingers in here and feel the oil. See if it feels... No, that doesn't feel like there's anything in it. Let's see if it looks metallic. No, it doesn't look metallic. It looks very, very brown. Yeah, there is nothing in this oil. It is actually super clean. Good job, Toyota, for making a good engine that can survive being turbocharged. You know what I forgot to do? Oil filter. Time to put the jack stand back. All right, well, welcome back, tub of used oil. I'm gonna need you again for when more used oil comes out from the filter. All right, is it hand tight? Yes, it is. Just the way it was meant to be. These days, I usually like using OEM Toyota filters, but I went to Walmart and I couldn't find one for this car, and I couldn't be bothered to go to the dealership, so I figured, well, I have a couple extra of these K&N filters. I should probably use them. Lube up the O-ring here. I mean, these are pretty small filters, so pre-filling it probably isn't necessary. I think it'll fill pretty quickly once I turn the car on. Okay, for the second time, we're pulling this drain pan out. Now we're actually done. Now I can take the jack stands out. Okay, we must now fill in some new oil. So cap comes off, and this little Mobil 1 bottle fits in there pretty nicely. And now we can fill in the oil. See, what I like about Royal Purple oil is that it's relatively dark considering that it's a new oil. So because it's a little darker than most oils start off with, it's much easier to see it on the dipstick. Okay, it's halfway between the lines, so it doesn't need too much more now. Maybe half this bottle. So it's almost there. And that's probably done it. Yep, that is now perfect. And now that it's perfect, I will slightly overfill it to compensate for the oil filter not being pre-filled. Should be about that much. That oil filter is not very big, so just needs a little bit extra to compensate. All right, oil change done, radiator refilled, all the bolts checked, and that is the 500-mile checkup complete. Only one thing left to do. Well, okay, I lied. Actually, there's two things to do. First of all, I'm going to write down the date and the mileage that this car next needs its oil changed. Let's see. So the current mileage is 171,091 miles. TurboKits.com recommends you change the oil every 3,000 miles. I will change it every 2,500 because 2,500 is exactly halfway to 5,000, which is when the maintenance light is going to come on. So this means that the next oil change should be done at 173,591. So the date is January 12th. I need to advance by 6 months. So the next oil change is due July 10th. And then the sticker just goes in the corner. I feel like a real professional using these service stickers now. No, I don't. I don't feel like a professional at all, actually. And the last thing we need to do is be responsible. We need to put this old oil into these empty tins here and then recycle them appropriately. If I fill this bottle to the brim, it might fit. It's so close. Please. Oh, it's gonna be right at the edge, but I think I got it. I have fit more than 5 quarts of oil into a 5-quart bottle. Unbelievable. And I don't have paper towels on me, unfortunately, so all of this junk is gonna stay in here until the next time I can clean it out. And there we have it. Everything that needs to be done with this car has been done. It's now fully broken in. We can have a lot of fun with it. It'll be a good time. We can start making more improvements to the setup, first being the exhaust, and then of course we'll need to get it tuned as well. Thank you everyone very much for your time today and joining me for another Turbo Corolla video. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.